La segunda participante del panel es Lelia Stadler, licenciada en Historia y Estudios Generales en la Universidad de Tel Aviv. Participa en el grupo de investigación Jews and the Left, Past, Present and Future del Instituto Roth para el Estudio del Antisemitismo y del Racismo Contemporáneo. Su tesis, conducida por Ranan Rhein, es Lost Husband, Jewish Bigamy and Divorce Between Argentina and Poland, 1919 and 1939. La exposición de hoy de Lelia va a ser In Search of Wandering Husbands, Jew, Desertion and Divorce Between Poland and Argentina, 1830 and 1839.
Thank you very much, Tzvi, for the introduction. Also, I would like to thank Anan and Stefan for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to share with you my master thesis, and I'm waiting for your remarks. Okay. I will start with a headline, which appeared in the Buenos Aires Yiddish newspaper Morgenzeitung on the morning of May 20, 1938. It read as follows: a warning on behalf of Ezrat Nashim organization, and I quote, as Ezrat Nashim has become aware that certain people, upon deserting their families in Europe, are looking to arrange shidduchim matchmaking for themselves or considering marriage, the executive committee decided to publicly call for the attention of women and their relatives to warn them and urge them to contact the organization for information so they would prevent such relationship from forming. At the same time, Ezrat Nashim seizes the occasion to admonish all the local matchmakers intent to unite people with whom they lack clear and precise information regarding their past. End of quote. This message from 1938 ended with an updated list of undesirable bridegrooms, to which 3 new men had been added, one of whom was a widowed shoemaker whose wife and 7 children lived at the same time in the Polish region of Volhynia. The shoemaker family is one example among many families that were spread out across the Atlantic during periods of mass migration to the Americas. Whether some men's departure preceded their families to prepare the ground for its joining, or whether they emigrated for a temporary period, eventually returning to their home country, migration resulted in a separation of the family members for an indefinite period. So between 1880 to 1924, it's known as the Great Migration, almost 3 million Jews left Europe believing that the answer to their growing economic distress was overseas. Of course, Jews were not the only ethnic group to migrate. 40 million people left Europe to the Americas in the same period. Then the well-known U.S. immigration quotas of 1924 did not completely stop Jewish immigration, but engendered changes in the migrants' destination. So during the interwar period, despite restrictive migration regimes and unfavorable economic conditions, Jews continued to arrive in significant number to Argentina. During the interwar period, more than 100,000 Jews immigrated to Argentina. So this warning, published by Ezrat Nashim, echoed an acute problem in an age of mass migration. How could the family survive the process of immigration, which involved a prolonged separation? And how was the emerging society of immigrants in the host country supposed to deal with families which seems to have irrevocably disintegrated? In the case of family breakup between Poland and Argentina, the focus of my present paper, the transatlantic relationships of married male immigrants and wife left behind had become one of the major concerns of the Buenos Aires branch of the International Jewish Association for the Protection of Girls and Women, locally known as Ezrat Nashim. Throughout the 1930s, the organization adopted a series of actions in an attempt to rectify what it considered as the deteriorated states of Jewish family life on both sides of the Atlantic. So, as I said, the present paper is based on my master thesis. Through case files detailing desertion, divorce, and bigamy, I explored the experience of men who migrated on their own, leaving behind spouses and children who hoped for eventual reunification. The analysis of family breakups allows us first to recognize that the Jewish family did not emerge intact from the tangled experiences of modern Jewish migration. And while most Jewish families have overcome the challenges of the period and had reunited in the host country, for other, complexities and difficulties led to their dissolution between Poland and Argentina. But it also raises important questions concerning the challenges faced by immigrants as they try to integrate into the new society, and also at the same time by women who remained in the country of origin. So we can ask, how did women manage to locate their missing husbands? What demands did they make, and what kind of protection they were afforded by international aid organizations? And how were the men treated in these cases? The present paper will focus on the case of the Kucher family, comprises of a man, a woman, and 2 children. The couple was split between Małopolska in southern eastern Poland and Buenos Aires. It was handled by Ezrat Nashim for 6 years, between 1933 and July 1939. The relationship between Moshe, a 37-year-old peddler from Buenos Aires, and his wife, Bela, in Poland, along other few examples, will help us detect a set of strategies adopted by women left behind in order to better their personal and economic situation. So, while women and especially those left behind are often portrayed as dependent and devoid of any agency, the women whose personal stories comprise my research reveal a different reality. A reality in which women were knowledgeable economic actors who, like their spouses, desired new opportunities, whether in Poland or far away in Argentina. And as I will try to argue in the course of this paper, transnational Jewish aid networks empowered women to make new demands from their emigrating husbands, gain legitimacy for their request for divorce and compensation, and protect their own right to emigrate within the framework of family reunification. So I'll first want to talk a little bit about the arrival of the family unit at one of the Jewish centers during the Great Migration and the interwar period. So the arrival of the family involved multiple personal and economic risks. It demanded the recruitment of the entire household and the accumulation of great amount of money and resources. And if to use Samuel Bailey's words, migration itself was a choice, and not everyone opted for it. The vast majority did not. Since the beginning of the massive waves of migration from Eastern Europe in the last third of the 19th century, the difficulty of financing the journey of an entire household engendered a distinguished migration pattern. Jewish immigration to the Americas took place in 2 stages. First, the head of the family emigrated to the Americas, prepared the ground and for the final joining of his wife and children. And after several years, he was joined by his wife and children. So this pattern, of course, of a permanent migration changed overnight the daily lives of many families. Married immigrant men lived and worked in a new environment, often in an urban and a vigorous city such as Buenos Aires at the turn of the 20th century. And at the same time, in Eastern Europe, in my case in Poland, spouses continued to provide for themselves and for their children, expecting their husbands' financial support to be transported safely from Argentina. Yet, in the separation, in this 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it depends, the relationship between the couple could weaken. And sometimes, as I see frequently in my cases, it was weakened right from the beginning. So we see, for example, that man letters diminish from time to time, and so does his economic support. And as shown by historian Gurel Ro'i specifically, some years could elapse before women became aware that her husband had decided to cut their ties with her. So, a glimpse of the set of emotion and stress faced by women during the separation period can be seen in a letter submitted to the Warsaw branch of the Jewish Association for the Protection of Girls and Women in 1933 by Hinda, a 40-year-old seamstress from Warsaw. Hinda's husband, Jacek, you can see his portrait right here, emigrated to Argentina a few years earlier, and in her letter, that I will read it to you right now, she expresses a robust approach depicting her expectation from her husband. I quote, "Dear husband, I'm writing you this letter to find out the meaning of your silence. Almost 6 years that felt like eternity have passed since you left, and I don't know what I have done to deserve it. I implore you, please explain to me why I should wait such a long time. The women organization told me you're coming back. For 3 months I was happy, and in the meantime it's already 6 months and nothing happens. Yossel, I caution you. You must write to let me know if you're coming back or if you're bringing me over, and if not, send me a divorce certificate. Recently, studies focusing on experiences of rupture and conflict associated with modern Jewish migration began to explore complex gender dynamics involving mass migration. This approach has led historians to delve into the adverse implication of immigration on the family and marital life, including the desertion of the original family in favor of new relationships in the host country. However, these studies center women deserted in the country of destination, namely the one who managed to emigrate, while the experiences of women who left behind in the country of origin, especially in times of severe migration restriction, is seldom dealt with directly. The number of pleas from Jewish women in Poland increased exponentially during the 1920s and 1930s, and their plight became increasingly central to the work of Ezrat Nashim. So let me say a few words on the organization itself, and then we will move on. So Ezrat Nashim started, as I said, as the first non-European branch of the International Jewish Association for the Protection of Girls and Women. It was founded by British Jews in 1895 in response to the growing strength of international trafficking in Jewish women. By the beginning of the 20th century, branches of the British organization had spread to numerous Jewish centers in Eastern Europe. You can see Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, also Mexico, South America, Brazil, Rio, Buenos Aires, and also in Poland specifically, we have in Lodz, Krakow, Białystok, Warsaw, Lemberg, and many more. And in this regard, regarding their work with the sex trade, the struggle of the Jewish community leaders against their identification with trafficking has featured prominently in the historiography, as a couple of you have wrote it about. And although this theme had no doubt influenced the image and absorption of Jewish immigrants in Argentina, other more prosaic experiences, if you may, deserve scholarly attention, such as family breakup. So I divide my analysis of family mediation into 3 parts: the appeal, the locating process, and the negotiation. The mediation process usually starts with an appeal made by a Jewish Polish woman. We already met Hinda, which appealed to the Warsaw branch seeking information about her husband. Rivka, another woman whose husband Wolf immigrated to Argentina in 1921, turned to Warsaw Rabbinical Council in 1932, demanding that her husband bring over her and their son to Argentina, or else negotiate a divorce. In the same year, we have Nesia's husband, Jose, a glove maker, that immigrated from Warsaw to Argentina. When a rumor about Jose's intention to remarry in Argentina made its way back to Poland, 24-year-old Nesia appealed to the Warsaw branch. However, not all cases were based on an Eastern European appeal. Information about missing men who had disappeared into thin air was also communicated from women's relative and landslate living already in Argentina. Also the husband's new partner, and also anonymous informants who left messages on the phone or presented themselves in their organization. Thus, the pre-existing immigrant networks were an important source that helped in solving some family problems by relaying information from Argentina to Poland and vice versa. In our specific case, a new partner in the host country is also featured. Also in this case, the new partner complaints set the process in motion. In October 1933, a young woman named Dora came to Ezrat Nashim and declared, "I've known Moshe Kucher for 3 months and knew of his intention to marry me. Well, having checked and found on my own that he has a family in Poland, I want to break up with him, but he keeps harassing me. I plead with your organization to interfere, to call Kucher to order, and to make him stop harassing me." End of quote. This declaration may point to Hirsch's effort to protect her good name by claiming that she did not know that her suitor was married. But it also led to Bela Kucher in Southeast Poland. The locating process in this case was double. Ezrat Nashim needed to locate both Bela in Poland and both Moshe in Argentina. She was fine providing for her 2 children without any support from her husband. So usually when a man's address was known, often it was provided from the beginning from his wife in Poland. And then Ezrat Nashim used to summon to the organization office. And we can see the invitation here. This is the invitation that Moshe received to his address. It's an interesting mix between Spanish and Yiddish. Just a second. Okay. But what happened when a man refused to come, or when they couldn't find him in his address? And that was the case of Moshe. You can see that it's written here, no vive Masaki. So when a man refused to cooperate or was not found at the address provided by his wife, other measures were taken, such as publishing an ad in the popular Yiddish press with his general description, his profession, his age, and the number of children he abandoned, to which his photograph was sometimes added. And here we can see Moshe's summons in the newspaper. These are small ones. We have 3 from 1934, and we have another a warning on behalf of Ezrat Nashim, an appeal to the matchmakers not to unite Moshe Kucher with the new woman. But the use of newspapers' appeal for locating the deserting husband was not an Argentinian innovation or a Jewish Argentinian innovation. As pointed by historian Mark Baker, these were inspired by earlier campaigns launched by Eastern European publishers during the late 19th century. As Ezrat Nashim case files show, these ads weren't only a reminder for husbands to resolve their family status. They had other addressees, every man or woman that possessed some information and could provide the organization information about the husband. The successful collaboration of private individuals with Ezrat Nashim and the visibility of the disintegrated families, as seen through these ads, shed light on Jewish immigrants' knowledge of the varied implication of migration on the family. So I'll skip these other examples. We can see Jacek ads, Hinda's brother that we read earlier, her letter. We can see Rivka's brother, Wolf ad, and another picture of the family from Poland. Okay, so we'll get back to Moshe and Bela. The locating process lasted almost a year until Moshe finally presented himself and then surprisingly expressed his willingness to take care of his wife and 2 children migration to Argentina. And indeed, his declaration was not an empty talk. We can trace an update from the headquarters in London confirming that Bela had received the necessary documents to carry out her departure. Yet, it was her sole responsibility to accumulate the capital that will eventually allow her and her children to emigrate. But often, the narratives presented by the couple, whether the man or the women, were undermined by an outsider. Whether a fellow Jewish-Polish immigrant in Argentina or a companion in Poland, these individuals became witnesses in the transnational investigation processes. An important turn in the Kucher case took place upon the visit of the couple's landslate, dubbed in the document as Mr. S., Mr. Schwab. Mr. Schwab informed that Moshe is cohabiting with another woman, not the young Miss Hirsch that we opened our talk with, but a new woman that he was living with her in Buenos Aires at the time. He also informed the organization regarding the young lady's pregnancy. So the news of Moshe's relationship and newborn child led to the negotiation between the couple regarding an official separation now, not the migration of his first wife to Argentina. And her migration no longer stood at the center of the discussion. She demanded, Bela, that all measures will be taken in order to prevent her husband from remarrying. Like other women whose stories can be traced in Ezrat Nashim files, Bela repeatedly demanded to be brought over to Argentina. The ability of women left behind to maintain their married status was crucial. Due to migration restriction, accepting a divorce meant that they would no longer be considered candidate for immigration, especially if they have no relatives in Argentina that can make the llamada. In any case, after several years of oscillating between his desire to bring over his original family and proceeding with his relationship with his new partner, Kucher eventually opted for the new family. He suggested sending a divorce, to his wife in Poland. Ezrat Nashim informed the headquarters secretary in a letter, I quote, "In a few meetings we had with Kucher, we tried in vain to convince him to comply with his wife's request and return to Poland. Kucher is determined to give her a get because he has no intention of ever returning to Poland, and he is attached to his common-law wife, the mother of his son. End of quote. While negotiating the transatlantic household, request for compensation emerged as a common thread. Bela refused to accept the terms of the divorce proposed by Moshe, and she repeatedly demanded that he himself return to Poland and arrange for a compensation. With the exception of $25, today about $400, $500, deposited by Moshe in May 1937, it seems that Bela did not receive any assistance from him. Israel and Hannah Shores, another couple's negotiation, also turned into a fierce struggle. When her husband asked for a divorce, Hannah sought expert opinion on the divorce condition offered by her husband in an attempt to understand her rights and legal options. She wrote to Ezrat Nashim organization from Warsaw. I quote, "I'd like you to let me know how many years after the divorce would be finalized my husband will continue to pay child support." End of quote. So, most women did not accept just any offer that was laid before them. In the case of Wolf Fritkovsky, that we can see here, his wife adamantly refused to accept the get he had sent her until it was accompanied by his pledge to support their 8-year-old son, Moshe. A complete rejection was common when the sum offered was less than what the wife had invested in her husband and her own prospective immigration. Fege Voigel declined her husband's offer to pay her $100 in return for a consent to the divorce. Although the organization advised her to accept his offer even before the money was deposited so that she would not remain an aguna, a chained woman, she refused to do so. In a reply, she explained that in the previous winter, she already received a better offer of about $120 than the equivalent of 500 zloty, which she had also declined because, I quote, "My husband has taken from me 1,300 zloty to finance his immigration," end of quote. A similar dispute broke out in the case of Nassia Buchwell and her glovemaker husband, Jose, who intended to marry a new wife and at first even refused to pay for the divorce. Through Warsaw Rabbinical Council, she claimed that she should be reimbursed for the hard-earned 700 zloty that had been taken from her. After 2 years of negotiation, the local Rabbi Meller was paid for the divorce, and Nassia was never compensated for her expenses. So, I'm concluding. Ezrat Nashim dedicated a considerable part of its activity during the 1930s to dealing with the implication of immigration for the institutions of family and marriage. Although historians have neglected the influence of husband prior migration on their families, Ezrat Nashim endeavored to resolve conflicts and to settle family status complaints, as well as to inform the Jewish population in Buenos Aires about the matter, demonstrate that family disintegration became an important issue in the migration experience of Eastern European Jews in Argentina. The integration of both men and women into the experience of modern Jewish migration and its examination through the prism of desertion and divorce reveal some of the hidden aspects of modern Jewish and non-Jewish mass migration. In the attempt to jumpstart the life outside Eastern Europe, both men and women experienced rapid change in extraordinary ways. As we have seen, women did not remain passive when faced with their husbands' migration. The existence of well-established transnational Jewish ed networks enabled women to fight for their own interest and to gain legitimacy for their varied requests, which depended on the way they interpreted the reality and the possibilities it laid for them. Exploring the disintegration of Eastern European Jewish families permits us first to take a close look at the delicate mechanism of the migration process itself, and second, to observe the complex and long-term consequences set into motion when husband and wife were on the move. Thank you.